Hello, and welcome back to That Does Not Belong to Me. I am excited and nervous to be back in front of this microphone or in front of this Zoom room. If you're watching this on YouTube, I can see, no, I can't see your face, but you can see my face. But I just felt like it was time. And someone has been borrowing my podcast mic, and I was like, no problem, no rush to get it back, no rush to get it back. And it finally got returned, and I kept kind of looking at it and side eyeing it and wondering if I was feeling called to speak to the mic again. And here I am. And it's going to be a solo episode. It's kind of a little easing back into the world of podcasting episode. My editor, Hannah, even offered to do it in a way that doesn't need to be necessarily consistent. So I was putting out episodes every 2 weeks, which felt good back in the day. And now she said it can be a little more on your own schedule. So who knows how this is going to go? Who knows what guests I'm going to have on the podcast? But as always, I'm so open to your feedback and to your recommendations. So send them my way if there's anything you want to hear. And just on the topic of podcasts, I guess. No, I was just thinking more along the lines of, is it still relevant to call this podcast That Does Not Belong to Me? And it is. And honestly, I think it always will be. And especially because at the moment I'm working on a book called That Does Not Belong to Me. And I don't know if I'd call it a memoir, but it is a nonfiction that shares some of my life in terms of, well, in bringing in human design or vice versa, sharing human design, and with that, giving examples of some of my life stories. And that's kind of how the podcast works as well, is I hope that you can learn some relevant lessons about human design through real life experiences, whether it be my own or people that I interview. Because I think when learning anything, I mean, for me personally, I learned so much better from stories versus like dry textbook material. So that is how I like to share as well. And I'll share briefly about the book writing process a little down the road, but just the concept of that does not belong to me is something that I still, it's still just like a really profound statement that I make when needed. And one that I almost really feel like in my body, because it's often needed at a time where my body's feeling a little shaken up, or, literally taking in something that's not mine, that's literally foreign to my body. So to be able to just to not only say the words, but to feel the words, that does not belong to me. That's what gets to happen more and more the more we practice this type of, I mean, boundary setting is kind of what it is, but really, had a feeling that would happen at some point. That's okay. But yeah, so I just feel like that statement, it continues to ring true to me, and it probably will forevermore. And I hope it helps you in any way that, any way possible. I hope it's a statement that comes up to you, in a moment where you're feeling this, it could be stress, anxiety, worry, sadness, anger, any sort of emotion that you're for sure allowed to feel. And emotions are very normal and important to move through the body, but some of them we're just wasting our time on. Some of them don't actually serve us at all because they're not ours. So that's just the reminder I'll give you, or the prompt I'll give you, to just keep telling yourself that when needed. Okay, so I was going to pause it, but I don't think I need to. Okay. So I put it out there on Instagram, what do you guys want to hear about on the podcast? And a couple people wrote me back. So I'm going to start with those things. And then I'm going to share a little bit about things going on in the world of being an entrepreneur right now, as well as, like I said, the book writing process, if anyone's curious about that, because holy shit, is it life transforming, transformational, but life changing. So one of my dear past clients and friends asked about just the idea of slow living. And I don't know if she was asking that because she thinks that I live slowly or that it's something that I try to work on and practice. She was in the playground with me. So we've definitely had conversations around this before, but it really got me thinking. And a lot of the stuff I talk about, that I want to talk about, that I want to teach about, gets me thinking because before I utter the words, I really try to check myself and see, am I living this? Am I walking the talk? And if not, that's okay. I can still talk about it. I feel like I forget what conversation or who I spoke about that with, but they were like, you can still teach. You can still teach from that place. But I really feel like I need to be living whatever it is that I'm teaching as well, which is why I'm so grateful to do this work. But yeah, slow living. So I think that, seasonally, we have different moments of like where our pace will shift. So if you want to take a moment now to just think about what is going on in your world, and the way I like to do a season of life check is literally take inventory of what is taking up time, what is taking up energy. Those kind of go in hand often. What are you spending money on? That's kind of it. and and with that you can kind of see the pace that you're moving at depending on how many things are filling that up, or depending on the size of whatever it is that you're spending your time and energy and maybe even money on. And so I'm just sort of taking inventory right now for myself. And, I'm coming out of the marina season. It's now October. It's almost my birthday. I'm not sure when this episode will be up, but my birthday is October 23rd. So just if that's relevant. But the marina closed over a month and a half ago. And that always allows things to wind down a little. But honestly, it's interesting because this summer, was my first summer running both the marina, which is the family restaurant that I run out here in the Eastern Townships of Quebec. And I stepped back a ton from waitressing. I had already started to do that a bit last year in preparation for potentially getting pregnant. Turns out it was in preparation for getting a diagnosis of follicular lymphoma, which I got in the summer of 2022. So that was actually quite helpful to have prepared for, I'm not going to lie. But this past summer was my first summer of running both the marina and then the Well, which is the yoga studio that I co-own here in Knowlton, which has been open now over a year. We're celebrating that. This is actually our anniversary month, the month of October. And it's just more and more such a special place for me, for I know so many members of our community. And when I look back at the space that Val and I have created, I know how healing it has been for me to teach there, to have conversation with people there. I get to go sometimes just to sign people up for, or sign people in for, chair yoga or eccentrics or different classes that we're now offering. And I just love chatting with the people before class and getting to see the joy that they have in being there. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm in the right place. Like, this is exactly right. And all of that is so good for me. So it's like all the work I get to do, it's so selfish, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I just feel like I'm on the right track in so many ways. But coming back to the point that this was the first summer that I would be working on both of those businesses, plus potentially my personal coaching business, which I never want to let die because it's really important to me to coach in alignment, coach in business, to create programs where I incorporate yoga, where I incorporate human design. And it actually would have been such an easy summer if I didn't have a billion doctor's appointments to go to. That's what I realized was actually the most time consuming part of my summer. And thankfully, I had things really well set up. And thankfully, because I set them up, and thankfully, because the team that I happened to hire this summer was so amazing and responsible and reliable. And that's at the marina, where I had such a smooth summer in terms of having very few fires to put out. I'm gonna pause it for this one. Okay, we're all safe. There were people walking by who clearly looked very dangerous. But don't worry, everyone, safe and sound over here. So, the marina team that I had this summer was amazing. All the waitresses I have at this point are basically my friends who are not only trustworthy, but like all of them are like managerial material that can make decisions that they don't need to run by me every single time. So I can be away from the space and feel so confident and assured that everything is going to be fine. So that's wonderful. And then at the well, I mean, Val, my partner there, is just been so unbelievably supportive. I mean, she knew what she was getting into in terms of I was already diagnosed when we finally signed the lease for the well. And in saying that, she didn't know what she was getting into. Neither did I. Neither does anyone when they're dealt a diagnosis or, these things can happen and you don't know what that's going to entail. So she's just been rolling with the punches, and there's some guilt that comes with not being able to be there as much as I would like to be, or things like that. And I really have to let that go. Obviously, that does not belong to me. Like it kind of does, but I don't need it to. It doesn't serve me. So yeah, just working on that. And she's helped a ton with that, of not making me feel bad. So those two places are just smooth sailing, but it was things like a colonoscopy or an endoscopy where they go down your mouth hole. And then I ended up getting my eggs retrieved, which, without going too much into that process, I feel like I could do a whole podcast episode on that if anyone was interested. But if anyone has gone through the IVF process, it's basically the start of that. We didn't do the actual fertilization because I can't get pregnant while I'm undergoing chemo, which is what is going on right now. But they managed to take my eggs and they froze 17 of them. The process was excruciating, and I more and more feel comfortable to say that, because, and it's not that I don't mind, I really don't mind talking about the process, but there's something, I don't know if it's a woman thing or if it's how I was raised or what, I'm very good at underplaying the pain, the amount of pain, the level of pain. And I always thought I had a high pain threshold. And then more and more, as I get more tattoos, like the older I get, I'm like, ow, this really hurts. So I don't know if my pain threshold is changing or that I'm actually giving myself permission to feel pain and to express that. So anyways, there was the pre-process of the egg retrieval, which was injections for about 2 weeks. And the hospital that I go to, which was in Sherbrooke, and they were so amazing there, but you basically have to go at first it's every 3 days, then every 2 days, then every day. And that was like an hour commute each way. And then there was going to the pharmacies to find the injections. And so it was just literally like a full-time job. So thankfully my other jobs, I was very well supported in. And then the actual process itself, I honestly didn't know. And it's funny because I feel like I've listened to people talk about IVF. I know a lot of people deal with infertility struggles, and I had no idea. And I'm not saying this to scare anyone who has to go through this, but I remember someone did tell me, someone who's gone through it, a friend of mine's, she just said it's very invasive. And I could tell that it was something that she was like, ugh. But we didn't for some reason talk in detail about it. And I had another friend who went through it and said, oh, they give you really good drugs. And she was able to like walk, the 10-minute walk back to where she was staying after she had gone through the recovery and was fine to do that. So I kind of had that in mind too. And I was ready to just like take a nap afterwards. But it was not like that at all. The process itself, and I don't know if it's because they got so many eggs, which I'm so grateful for, that maybe it took longer. And so, at first I was drugged up, and they give you something for the pain and they give you something to calm you. And so I could feel that kind of like, ooh, okay, I'm kind of loopy. And I remember at first I started to tear up a bit. And I know it's because I was just having a moment of like, oh my God, this is for our future baby. Like, that's huge. Honestly, I don't think I fully dealt with the trauma of this experience though, actually. So at first the tears were for that. And then partway through, I don't know how long it was. I think they say it takes like 20 to 30 minutes, which sounds really long. And so maybe it was. I don't, it's all a bit of a time warp when you're on drugs, but, and then the tears turned to pain. It was so painful. I didn't expect to do this. I really thought it's like I feel separated from it or distant from it, but I think it's good to talk about too. And then not only that, but I didn't really get a nap afterwards because I was in so much pain afterwards. And the nurse was, at the desk kind of in front of me, and she kept looking at me and seeing the pain on my face, the discomfort, and I was still kind of crying a bit, and I felt so bad for Duncan, who was there with me. It's so hard to watch a loved one go through that and not be able to do anything. He was giving me water, which was good. And eventually they sent me on my merry way, sent us on our merry way. We got in a wheelchair because there was another time I was leaving the hospital after a biopsy. I can't remember if I've talked about this yet, but I fully passed out while waiting by the door about to exit the hospital to go get in the car that my friend that was picking me up. So fully passed out and ended up in emergency. Everything was fine, but we just didn't take any chances, especially because I was still a little bit drugged up. So got in that wheelchair and made our way home. And this is not what I wanted to spend the podcast talking about, but even the aftermath, a week later, I was sick. I was feverish, and they didn't know if it was infection from the egg retrieval, which it very well could have been, or if it was due to the lymphoma, because I also had like masses in my groin that were cutting off circulation in certain areas. My vagina was super swollen and puffy, like all these things that, like, honestly, the doctors and nurses that I dealt with were so amazing. I was so grateful that it was majority women. Not because male doctors are bad, but just because it made me feel more comfortable. But there was so much information or things that I was like, is this normal? And I don't know. I still don't know. So I'm saying this stuff out loud because if you go through this or if you've gone through anything like this, you're not alone. And that's much of what I like to talk about, just to make people feel not alone, so that I'm not alone either. Again, selfish over here. So I can share more about that at another time, but I don't want this whole podcast to be about that. Take a deep breath here for a second. So back to the question of slow living. The summer was busy with appointments and whatnot. And then coming into the fall season, I think it's been slow. I have to say, like, sometimes I look at my calendar and I'm like, oh, today I just teach for 1 hour, or, today I don't teach at all. And maybe I'll go to a yoga class, which I've been trying to do more of lately. But if you know me, I definitely always have a lot of ideas and a lot going on. And currently I'm coaching 3 amazing women one-on-one. So that's it's a couple calls a month with them, but it's also voice note coaching throughout the month. So they pop into my phone in various ways and we voice note back and forth. And I absolutely adore this. I was voice noting one of my clients this morning while I was prepping my breakfast and just working through whatever it is that she's going through in terms of her business she's trying to build while still maintaining a job, and the relationship that she's in, and all kinds of stuff. I love this so much. And especially like live, like this means that if something pops into your head, if you're working with me, you can message me right away. You can voice note me, and I don't always write back immediately or respond back immediately, but I'm just there in your corner and offering my input and advice and support and whatever it is you need. So I'm absolutely loving that. And I'll talk a bit about what led to that, but yeah, so that's part of what's going on. Aside from teaching at the Well, I'm doing the social media at the Well. Val and I have managed so well to find our little our specialties in terms of running the business together, and we just both we both actually excel in different ways, so it works so well as a business partnership. I feel like a whole other podcast could be done on collaborating with someone as well, because that's another interesting topic. I'm also writing this book, right? So the thing about the slow piece or slow living is a little bit at the moment, it feels like there's always something I should be doing. And I say should, even though I definitely teach to not shitting all over the place. Don't do things just because you should. Um, so maybe that actually was the wrong word. Sometimes it feels a bit like a should, and I've been really sitting with that. I actually had a session recently with one of my first coaches, Melissa Collerett, who just wrote a book and has a couple other manuscripts on the go. So I had a session with her about writing books, and we spoke a bit about the timeline of a book, because it can feel a bit like this, not a cloud, but kind of like a cloud, just at the back of your head that's like, oh, I should dedicate time. And some people are far more structured than I am. They're going to wake up. Mel had a period where she'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning for days on end just to get the thing done. And Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Big Magic, she also would get up super early in the morning and write every single morning. Um, and that's just not going to be me. That's just not. And so I'm trying to figure out what my groove is and trying to commit some time every day. But that also is something I'm experimenting with, because it's nice to have days where I say, today I'm not going to write at all. I'm just not going to think about it and not think of it as like where I can fit it in or something I have to do. So the book writing process has been, it's gotten me to get to know myself on a whole other level. If you've been doing this sort of work on yourself, healing, self-development, I want to talk about the word healing because I also don't love that word, and I've used it a couple times now. Still trying to wrap my head around that. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah. And you've worked on things like limiting beliefs, push through them. We're always going to have little blips up and down, moment where we're questioning ourselves, questioning the decisions we're making, things like that. But I felt like I was like, I got a good grasp on this life thing. I'm always learning, evolving, challenging myself. But I really was feeling like, and I struggle with confidence. I don't want to think that, it's smooth sailing, but I've worked on it. So I am far more confident in things I do. I fake it till I make it. Like there's nobody's business. And if confidence is something you're struggling with, it's something we can definitely talk about together. But I keep getting very well sidetracked by myself. Okay, back to the book writing, because this is what has made me question everything. Question everything. So if I thought I had handled these like limiting beliefs of like, who are you to think? And I worked on that, around my business, around being a yoga teacher, around being a coach. Still like creeps up now and then, like, but what are you actually an expert in? And like, oh, nothing, just like a whole bunch of little bit of knowledge around everything. I guess that's gonna now. But anyways, I've worked. It doesn't sound like I've worked on it, but I think I have. And then with writing this book, it's like I don't know myself anymore. No, that sounds really dramatic. I definitely know myself, but I'm getting to know myself again through this process, especially because I'm writing about my journey, which again, the first thing that comes up is like, who cares about your journey? Like, what's important or special about that? And that, I know, as I'm saying those words out loud, sounds so mean to myself. And I know that you're listening to this saying, of course we want to hear about it, Jamie. We like you, we love you, we care about you, or whatever it is you may be thinking. We do this. I just want you to know that you speak to yourself this way probably too, and we really shouldn't. We really, really, really shouldn't. I want to pull out my phone because it's just making me think. I was listening to Chelsea Handler's podcast, and she was interviewing Gabor Mate. And a quote that I took while I was listening is, it's dangerous to be kind only to others and not to yourself. It's dangerous. That really hit me, because we know self-love is important. We know we should speak nicely to ourselves, just as we do others, as we do our besties. But it's literally dangerous to be mean to yourself. And because he's speaking a lot to chronic illness that happens, the way our brain is formed by what we're bringing into our body, by the trauma that's surrounding us, by what we're taking in. And so we're a big part of that. We're a big player in what we experience in life. So anyways, let's be nice to ourselves, okay, as much as possible, because that's a real big part of not getting sick, actually. And so I'm really trying to sit with that now too. So anyways, I feel like I can move on from the slow living thing just because I think parts of it, or what it really comes down to, is what season of life are you in? What pace is realistic, as in like what there's sometimes seasons where it's like, oh, this is the pace I have to go at. This is we're going. And then there's going to be other moments or maybe little mini seasons throughout the season, many little mini vacations you can take where you slow the hell down. And it really is an important part is to take the pauses whenever you can. Just a fly, because we need to stop and check if we're still going the right direction. So that's a big part of the slowing down piece. I think it doesn't necessarily mean you have like a week vacation where you do absolutely nothing. That's not realistic for everyone, and that's not also enjoyable for everyone too. So if you can just take little mini vacations, as in, a little time here and there, I think that's sometimes just the realistic way to do that too. And then in those moments, allow yourself to breathe, allow yourself to open up to creativity and to, I say wonder and just be curious about life. Those are those moments where we're not cramming our brain or trying to move so fast or get shit done. That's when I think the magic really happens. So it's really important to take those moments. And I really try to start my day like that. I've given up on meditation, to be honest. And I felt really good about that, actually. And I teach it in my class. They'll be like partway through a class and they'll be like, let's sit here and let's breathe. And I don't complicate it. I, give little things to focus on within ourselves. That's it. And I do it as I'm guiding it. It's harder to do it when you're guiding it, and I'm like, this feels really good. And I'm like, perfect. This is how I do it then, is when I share it with others and when I'm doing it in community. That's perfect. Because when I was forcing it to try to do it every morning or before bed, or it just felt like that thing that little rock that is in my shoe that I was like, let me just kick this out of my shoe. That's not a good example or metaphor, but it just felt like that thing that I had to get done. Kicking the rock out of the shoe feels good. So that's not, don't relate it to that. But I do often start my morning reading one poem now. I'm super into poetry all of a sudden. Andrea Gibson, my favorite. Megan Falley is who I'm taking a poetry class with right now, which is challenging the shit out of me even more, to the point where the book writing process actually feels a little easier. So this is a good trick, you guys, is if something's feeling hard in your life, but you want to do it. So this is the thing for me with the book writing, is I know I want to do it. It could be so easy to give up on it. I hired an editor, Leandre. He's amazing. He's like kind of holding my hand through it. We meet I'm bleeding. I just cut my finger before. It's fine. But we meet every couple of weeks, and he's helping me edit the book and everything, and kind of just stay on track and offering nice, like awesome tips and stuff for writing. And if I hadn't hired him, if I hadn't invested in that way, I don't think I'd be doing this anymore, or it would take me 5 years at least. So this has been a really crucial part of it, is like investing in myself so that I can do the thing that I want to do. And that's where I've had to stop and check, like, why am I forcing this? Why? Because it feels really hard. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not aligned, right? That's something that it's made me realize, because so much of human design is like, move through life with ease. Here are some strategies that will help you move with more ease. And that's what I love about it, because why are we forcing our way through life? And so when I was writing this book, or I'm writing it, I'm like, it feels a little sticky. Why am I forcing it? And it's because I zoom out and I look at this bigger picture that I want to have, and this bigger legacy that I'm creating. And it's not to say, this book is going to be on a world bestsellers list, but it might change one person's life. And I know, like, we say that and it's like, yeah, okay, one person or whatever. It's probably going to change more than one person's life. And I have to say that with, like, I believe that. I truly believe that. So of course I need to write this book. Of course I need to share my story. And that makes me stick to it. And even though it's hard, and some days are harder than others, it's still something that is so important to me. And I know I'm going to be so proud of myself for having done it. So if you're doing something that's hard, do something that's harder. It's going to make things, it's going to put things in perspective. I didn't realize that was going to be the case. I just all of a sudden realized that sometimes when I write posts, it was like a little bit poetic. It felt like really fun to like put it out there that way, to not use punctuation, to just make it kind of free flow. It doesn't rhyme or anything. It's not that kind of poetry, but I was like, I all of a sudden was like, oh my goodness, maybe this is something I can explore a little bit. And so when I saw this program, this course advertised, it's a 6-week course with Megan Falley, called Poems That Don't Suck. And she likes to just point out the fact that, first of all of our poems really need to suck like many, many times. And she's big on pushing editing, which is something that's new to me because usually I'll write something and just never want to look at it again. And sometimes when I reread things, I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And sometimes I'm like, oh, what was I thinking when I wrote that? But I was never into editing because I was like, oh, whatever I wrote in that moment was meant to be what was supposed to be, you know? And the thing is, sometimes we can revisit things and we can make it better and it can become better. So, I mean, obviously that's happening with my book and I'm getting help with that, but editing your own poems, and part of the program she offers is feedback as well. So you submit a poem every week, which is like, especially for someone who's like, doesn't feel like they're a poet. But it's really good. And it's a real good practice to get feedback, because as much as we know it's important, it's really hard. It's really hard to receive feedback. And maybe some of you are like, oh, I don't mind at all. It helps me grow, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we know that, but it still feels kind of yucky sometimes. So I think it's something that's been so good for me. And I was working on one of my poems last week. And then when I sat to work on my book, I was like, oh, this is easy. And I'm hoping the poetry too, just taking the course, the poems themselves we'll see, but the course itself is actually helping me expand my language. It's helping me expand. You wouldn't always know it with my podcast, but no, it's helping me become a little bit more creative in the words that I use. And the thing that's so cool about this class and poetry, I would say in general, especially because I'm trying to find things to write about, so you're like looking around for inspiration all the time, is it really helps you see the world in a different way. Like after one of the calls, or I don't, it was around then, and I was really thinking about poetry, and I was on a drive to go visit my friend Grace, and like the cornfield I passed, I was like, there's a fucking poem in there. Like, it's so beautiful. And I was driving through this place called Venise en Quebec, which is like a little bit of a tacky, like beach town. And there was a single dock and a woman sitting in like a folding chair, a metal folding chair at the end of the dock with a fishing rod. And I was like, that's a poem. And I like, I that image comes into my head. There's so much around us that is so beautiful that it just passes our eyes by because we're so, we're fixed on this thing that's in front of us that we think is important, or that we think we need to get to, or that we think we need to get done. When just like, if you look at your periphery, if you look to the sides of you, to the edges of your vision, it's magical. It's really, really special. So this also comes in, pausing to, taking those moments to just kind of stop and open your eyes and see the world around you. So that's the book writing experience, everyone. Stay tuned. I'm actually hoping, I'll say this out loud. At first I was like, this is crazy talk, but I think I can get it written, like the first raw rough draft by the new year, by 2024, or by the holidays or something. And I broke it down to how many words I can write in an hour roughly. And I was like, oh, and I Googled how many words are in a book, a nonfiction book, roughly. And it doesn't sound that crazy anymore, actually, when I broke it down that way. So I think I'm just going to make that happen. I had said I'm going to write a book in 2020. What year are we? 2023. And then it seemed crazy at one point once I started writing, and I was like, yeah, there's no way. And now I'm like, you know what? Challenge accepted. Let's do this. So the other thing I want to talk about is just decisions around my personal business. So during the summer, I didn't really do much. The focus was the marina, the focus was the well, the focus was my health and doctor's appointments. And then coming into the fall, there was a period towards the end of the summer where I was getting ideas that I wanted to put out to the world, workshops I wanted to run. I wanted to start this healing hub that was like a program or membership for people going through health-related shit. It was going to be very uplifting, or it will be if it happens still. I wanted to maybe jump back into the podcast. There were so many things, coach female entrepreneurs, talking with my friend Jess about doing something together, collaboration, like we did Club Create and we did our Wonder Weekend. So we're talking about another one of those. But I had to put everything like on pause. I just had to wait because I knew at this point that I was going to be getting chemo. And the type of chemo I'm getting is called BR. It's the BR treatment. It's bendamustine rituximab, and it's part chemo, part antibodies. And thankfully, I'm so lucky. It's a kind that you don't lose your hair. Sometimes there can be no side effects. Sometimes there can be side effects. And I've had a little bit. I've had 2 rounds now, and I was a bit sick over our Canadian Thanksgiving weekend, which was a few days after treatment. It also coincided with getting my period, which has been a real bitch since the egg retrieval. So not sure if it's the chemo or the whatever it went on in my body during the egg retrieval that has caused me now to not feel so good around that time of the month. And they happen to be at the same time now. It'll spread apart shortly because my chemo is every 4 weeks and my period is my cycle is about 30 to 34 days or something like that. So my business, I just had to wait. I just didn't want to put things out there to only have to cancel them or to change the schedule because I was just waiting on my treatment days. So finally I got them. So I knew when they were going to be, and I also didn't know how I was going to react to the treatment. So I could kind of plan things, but I also had to be a little bit careful because if I didn't react too well, if I had like a week or 2 that I didn't feel good after, then I, obviously didn't want to have to cancel a bunch of things. And the thing is, I had asked one of my doctors when I was there for an appointment, I said, oh, I teach yoga, this is my line of work. What would you suggest as time to take off if I wanted to play it safe after treatment? And he said 2 weeks. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening. Like, for sure, I'm my priority. My health is my priority. But I'm not only working half the month, that's super not realistic. And if I had to do that, obviously, if I was sick on my, in bed and I couldn't get out of bed, then that's the way it would be. But I was not going into it expecting that or, planning for that. And the problem is too, what they said is sometimes the reaction that you have to the treatment is not just the day of, the day after, the days after, it can be like the week later. So that's the hard part to plan. So similar to how when I first got my diagnosis, it made me think of that because we were supposed to open the yoga studio, then I got diagnosed, and then we were like, okay, hold on a second. And then it reached a point where I still didn't have all the answers. I knew it was going to be a watch and wait situation. I knew it was going to be chronic. It's something that I have forever. And I was like, okay, I'm not just going to wait around. Like, I'm not just going to sit back and let my life just fly by, basically. So let's do things, shall we? And, worst case, I have to cancel. I have to reimburse people. Worst case, not the end of the world. So in the end, I ended up launching. I was really excited to offer these one-on-one coaching packages. And I put it out there at a special price because it's my birthday month. And 2 people snatched it right away. I didn't even have to do a post about it. I didn't put it in my email. I just did a story about it spontaneously when I had the idea. I had a little mini weekend away at a place that was in this cute little cabin about 10 minutes from my house. It was so amazing. I went there for 3 nights. It was gifted to me by my friend Pat Duncan. And it was so good for my soul. And it was so good for my creativity too, because it was from that weekend that I just had this idea and put it out there. And it was a huge success. So this is something too that I'm teaching, any entrepreneurs I'm working with is when the energy is there to back the thing you want to do, you can't go wrong. And that's where on the opposite end, if you find yourself forcing something because you need to make an offer happen, because you need to get this, you wanted a 5-figure month in the month of October or November. So you got to push to make things happen. Let's make a workshop, hurry, last minute, let's make discounts on things, hurry. That energy is going to be seen in how you sell and how you market. And it's going to potentially repel people. It's going to, potentially push people away. So if you're feeling moments where you're not inspired or stagnant in whatever it is you want to be doing or offering, find something to get your creative juices flowing again, because it needs to come from inside of you. You can't force it. I mean, you can, and maybe you'll make some sales, but it's not going to feel great on either end, on your selling end or the purchasing end. So this is what I did. And that's what I continue to do. Again, really using the base understanding of human design, that I see how I respond to things. I let my gut guide me into what excites me, what doesn't. And I make decisions based on that. And such as the decision that I made, which is quite ironic, I think would maybe be the word, around not doing human design readings anymore, except for with people that I'm coaching. So in this 1 month coaching package I'm offering, which is available from for November onward, if anyone is interested, it's up on my website, actually, jamiemore.com. My lovely VA Sky put that up there for me recently. It's your little musical interlude. You don't get ads in this podcast, but you get a little song and dance by me. Coming back to it, I remember now. So so I made the decision to not do human design readings unless you're working with me. So I love coaching, and I think what I realized, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I think why I realized one-on-one coaching was the way to go, which I find a lot of coaches almost move away from at a certain point, because you can, ideally you're helping a lot of people, and financially, if you're helping a lot of people and they're paying a little bit less maybe than they would one-on-one, you're making more money still. And I don't charge, some coaches charge like literally $1,000 for one session, $500. Like, I'm not there, and I don't really want to be there. But I love one-on-one. This is where I'm going to be really honest about the backside, kind of the back end, because I don't really have to plan for it. And that's where I've really had to lean into my own confidence in myself to know that I have what it takes to help somebody, whether it's business, whether it's life. I have it inside of me, so I don't need to plan for it. And it's really spontaneous. It's really intuitive, the guidance that I get to give on the one-on-one calls with them or through the voice note coaching. Whereas when I run a program, like I did Ebb and Flow, I had the alignment series, all of those were freaking planned. Like, I worked really hard to organize those. Like any workshop I give, it's the same thing. So energetically, it actually felt really good right now to just do one-on-one coaching, but to do that, because I get to just like really go with what I already know. And I think like a lot of us have that inside of us and we question it, but this is really helping me lean into that because I know it's there. So that's been really fun. And I'm always going to use human design. If my client is open to it, I'm always going to use human design to help propel the coaching. But yeah, it just doesn't feel aligned to do just singular readings anymore. And so I have people to suggest who do them. I have a friend of mine who's interested in like diving into human design, who I'm like, you should do readings. Let's get going on that. But yeah, no, and that's the ironic part, is that like my whole podcast, my book that I'm writing, all of it is based on human design. And that was something that came up on my call with Mel. She was like, what do you want out of this book? Like, if someone buys the book, reads it, then maybe they're going to want to book a reading with you. And I was like, no, I don't actually want that. But that's okay. I want them to enjoy the book and benefit from the book. And who knows what I'll have going on at that time. So they can always reach out. So that's felt like a really good decision. Okay. I think I'm done. I actually had little notes. I know it seems a little bit like I went really spontaneously today, which I did in the end, hence the tears. But I did have a bit of a plan, and I kind of covered all my bases. I just wanted to share like a couple of things that, if this interests anyone, is books that I'm reading at the moment, or podcasts that I'm listening to, and movement that I'm doing at the moment. So the books that I have going, the ones I've been reading a lot of, are by the author Zoe Whitall. And so she writes fiction books. She's actually from the Eastern Townships originally, but lives in Ontario. And I'm just the worst at remembering book names, but I do remember The Fake is the one that I first bought by her. Spectacular is another one that she has that I haven't read yet. And then there's another one that's so good that I can't think of the name. If there's more than like one word, I guess, I can't remember the name, even though it sits on my bedside for ages. But she recently was in Knowlton for the literary festival, which I attended for the first time. It's been going on for 13 years now, and this is my first time attending. I'm so amazed and proud of my small town for doing this, for hosting it. If anyone knows the author Louise Penny, she's like a big advocate of Knowlton. A lot of the books she writes are based on Knowlton, Three Pines. So that's very cool for our community. And we had Kathy Rakes here who wrote Bones. And I think that was what the Bones series is based off of. So that's very exciting. But I got to hear Zoe Whitall speak, and it was so inspiring. Even though I don't write fiction, still so amazing. And Rowan Higgins is a poet who I got to hear speak on the opening night. And not only that, but there was like open bar and like appetizers going around. I really got my money's worth that night. So that was really fun to attend. I've just opened up my whole world, I feel like, by just being all of a sudden acknowledging the fact that I am a writer or that I like writing. And I think that's something that we all need to do a little more of. We resist these titles or these like, I don't know, skills that we may have, even though they're not perfected by any means, or maybe though you might be new to it, like dive in, just go for it, because who the hell knows what's on the other side of that or what's in that. And it's really exciting to figure it out. And, you know, it just allows you to continue to grow too. So that's something that I'm loving. So I always have one fiction book going, and then I have like 5 nonfiction books going. So I'm currently reading Aspiring Mama by Melissa Collerett, which I'm loving. And I'm currently reading poems by Andrea Gibson. I think it's called There Better Be Lightning is the name of the book, which is really, really beautiful. And I have a couple. Oh, Brianna Wiest is another writer that I love. When I think it's called When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal, and that one's really beautiful too. So these ones I kind of just pick up and I alternate which ones. But yeah, highly recommend all the ones I mentioned. I'll probably try to put them in the show notes. And then podcasts I'm listening to. If you listen to podcasts, I'll always have Glennon Doyle and Chelsea Handler kind of up there that I don't like. I don't listen to all of their episodes because they have so many. So I select which ones I really enjoy. But Andrea Gibson and Megan Falley were recently on an episode of Glennon Doyle's podcast, and I highly recommend that. And yeah, Andrea Gibson was interviewed too, just solo too. So that episode is incredible. And yeah, Chelsea Handler is badass. She's come such a long way, I feel like. And I feel like it's very therapeutic actually to listen. She offers really wonderful advice from like a real, raw, genuine place. And then the one that I'm listening to, well, I always listen to like murder style ones. The Culprit, or I think is the one I'm listening to right now. But also what was suggested to me by my friend Christy is If Books Could Kill. And it's really good. They kind of analyze mostly it seems like self-help books, I think, that those type, like Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, the 4-Hour Work Week. And then I haven't listened to Atomic Habits yet, but I'm really excited to listen to that one. And the two guys are super funny. And yeah, they just kind of pick apart these books that were like The Secret, and, you know, these books that maybe some considered almost like a Bible at one point, where it was like, oh, the answers are all in here. Here it is. Here's the answer to life. And they're like, let's just look a little deeper inside of that. But I'm really enjoying that. Movement I'm doing. Do you guys like how I've made this little part of the podcast? Do you like it? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. I started doing this 14-day eccentrics challenge with my good friend Christy, the one I just mentioned. And eccentrics is an exercise that helps. The concept is kind of backwards aging, which I was talking to Val about, and we were like, I get the idea. That's kind of neat. But we were both like, we don't want to like discourage aging. Like the aging process itself, like getting older, is a beautiful thing. I actually like embrace the shit out of that. Obviously our bodies it takes a toll on our bodies in certain ways. And I think the less we use it, the more we lose it, right? That's an expression. It's not just me who thinks that. My dad does too. But eccentrics is a really neat model, though. It's really about elongating the muscles rather than like allowing them to shrink up. And you can get very toned through these movements that they do. It's part dance, it's part aerobic, stretching. I mean, I'm not explaining it probably in the perfect way, but we actually have eccentrics classes at the Well, which I love taking. But I started doing this online challenge through their platform, and I actually chose, because it was an age, you could choose the age category you were in. So it was like 14-week challenge for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. And even though I'm turning 39 in under a week, I chose 40s. I was like, I'm basically there, right? And so I did that for a few days. And then I didn't really do it so much for a couple days. And then this week, yes, on Monday, I went to a yoga class at the well. And tonight, I'm going to go to a yoga class at the well. And last night, I took dance class with Sarah. I'm doing the fierce and feminine dance again. And so, you know what? I'm like, I'm moving. I walked Marley to and from the garage today. And so I really let go of the rigidity. Like, this is an example I give often in my human design readings about when we commit to something and we think we have to follow through with it. And in human design, for many like generator energy types, you're allowed to change your mind. And I just think anyone is allowed to change their mind if they want. So when we look at doing these sort of like challenges like this, it's really important to think about it, especially if you're like feeling like you don't want to be doing it anymore. And like do that zoom out thing like I did for the book writing process, where it's like, is the bigger thing to do it because you said you were going to and you want to say you did it and then you just want to get it done so you can get it done and out of the way? Or is it because you want to take care of your body and feel good and move your body? Because if that's the case, then maybe it's okay that you do something else one day. It doesn't need to be eccentrics, or you don't need to be so rigid with that. And if you have a day of rest, maybe that's okay too. I think we have to challenge ourselves, and because it's easy for me to be like, well, it's not aligned anymore, so I'm just not going to do it. And it's like, well, no, you still want to take care of your body and move your body. So let's see what else we can do here. So do what you got to do. But I love variety. It's the spice of life. You guys know that. Okay. Well, I added an extra whole chunk of time there, even though I said I was done before. But I'm really happy to be back. Clearly, I had lots to say in the end, and I think I honestly could have made this like 2 hours, but I really hope you're still here. And if you are, I love you even more than the people who are not here anymore. And let me know what you want to hear. I'm an open book because I have no plan or structure with this podcast other than pure love and passion for it, and connecting with you guys. When you reach out to me and you're like, I listened to your episode, I'm like, this literally heals me. It makes me better. So thank you. I feel like love does that. So thank you. And if you're curious to work with me, I did decide that coming into this season of the podcast, I would actually try to promote myself a little more, because that's what so many people use podcasts for, actually. But if you're interested in some coaching one-on-one, whether it's a one-off session, we just wham blam, get a bunch of stuff done and figure it out for you, or if it's that month-long container is what they call it, that's available as well. I'm going to be like limiting. I'm not going to just open it up to so many people, but you can pick and choose which month would be good for you. Make the most of it. And come see me at the well if you're around here. I would love to take a class beside you or teach a class to you. And I love you so much. And bye.